One of my absolute favorite quotes is a Zig Ziglar quote. It's, you can have everything you want if you just help enough other people get what they want. And when I think of that quote, I think of a lot of people, but one of the people I think about is Tyler Hopp, our speaker today. He has built a pretty incredible real estate business and like 3 to 4x'd his number of transactions here on the HouseHack Seattle team, specifically by helping real estate investors achieve their goals. I think he's going to talk a lot about some of his client deals. And like a lot of people on the team, he practices what he preaches. He just did a pretty cool seller finance wrap deal with Logan over in Bremerton that I think is going to be a part of this presentation as well. So Tyler is rocking and rolling, doing deals, and one of those people that if you're just getting started, I think you can look to and you can ask a lot of questions because he's in the thick of it right now, both for his clients and for himself, and has some really valuable experience to share. So without further ado, I'll invite Tyler up.
All right. Want to get the...
I'll switch this up, yeah?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so today, as Michael might have mentioned, as you know, you're all here because we're the HouseHack Seattle team. Whether you show... Oh yeah, that will help. Whether you saw us online through Meetup or you got a spam email that you decided to open today, for whatever reason why you're here, and you're here to learn about real estate and network with your community, which I think is super cool and super valuable. So yeah, today we're going to talk about the power of house hacking, how many of you guys who I've talked to today are currently renting, how to change your financial freedom, and taking yourself from a tenant to an investor. Also at the end, I'm going to touch on kind of doing ground level feasibility studies for DADUs, since I know a lot of people here are interested in that kind of stuff too. So yeah, without further ado, we're going to begin. I know the real reason why we're here is to learn all about me, right? So I'm going to share a little bit about my story and where I'm at today, and then we'll get into the good stuff. So I grew up in Washington my whole life. There's a picture of my family there. I grew up in Kent, Washington, which is about 45 minutes south from here, if you don't know that. Played sports my entire life, which was a ton of fun, and ended up getting a pretty cool scholarship playing soccer at Northwest University. While I was in school, somebody told me that I wasn't supposed to make any money, and I took that advice and I ran with it. There was a course I took called Real Estate Investments, and from that moment on, I was hooked. I learned all about the different ways you can make a ton of money in real estate, and I was just fathomed by all of the numbers I was seeing in class. So at the end of the class, the lady who had taught the course offered me a job as a junior broker, and I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. Today, now I know that that's not a real thing. That's not like an actual position. She just wanted me to work for basically free. But we got past all that, and now I'm here today because I did spend a ton of time and a ton of resources learning a lot about real estate. Again, it's a struggle making money your first time in real estate, but again, you're not supposed to make money in college, so I thought this would be a good time to learn. Fast forward a little bit, while I wasn't making money, I still had to sustain myself, right? So I'm pretty entrepreneurial, so I started a couple small businesses. I took one of my roommates and we just started hanging Christmas lights. Put a Craigslist ad up for 20 bucks and we made like 20 grand in 3 weeks. It was crazy, just climbing up people's ladders, not licensed. We were roof rats up there, just hanging people's lights, and it was super fun. Started a photo booth installation business and just kind of had my head in everything, which I sold this year actually. While I was in college, I got the opportunity to play soccer another year because of COVID, and it led me to get my MBA, which was super awesome. I didn't anticipate doing that, but I did it. And recently got married last summer to my wife, who's here right now supporting me. Married life's awesome, highly recommend. And then I started focusing on real estate. So as I mentioned, a lot of irons in the fire. I was doing a ton of things, and I started putting my focus into something that I felt a lot of passion in. I felt sort of like a calling to. And so yeah, kind of ditched everything, like I said, sold my business, put all my focus into real estate. And like Michael said, it's hard to not do what you preach. So I put my practice into what I preached and didn't think it was possible, but somehow, some way ended up buying a property this year, which was super, super cool. Logan and I partnered on this Bremerton Burr in the back here is the property. It's in Bremerton, so it's not the most glamorous thing, but we've put a ton of money into renovating it. We're gonna keep it as a rental. It's like the coolest deal ever. We got it fully seller financed. Our mortgage on it's like $1,300 a month, and we're gonna cash flow for the rest of our lives. So that's really cool, and just one of the ways you can make money in real estate. But today we're not going to talk about burrs. Today we're going to talk about seller or house hacking, which we'll get into now. So What is house hacking? For those of you who have probably heard about house hacking, you know, you got your traditional buy a fourplex for $900,000, put 3% down for $27,300 plus some closing costs. Your mortgage payments are only $6,000, and then you rent units 1 to 3 for $2,000 each for $6,000, and now all of a sudden you're living for free. That sounds fantastic, right? That sounds like too good to be true. Because when you're breaking down these numbers, this is what you're seeing on the internet. This is what you go on to Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, and this is what you're being fed. Well, sad to say, that's not actually how it really plays out. Those numbers are really hard to make work, and in most markets, especially Seattle, it's just not like that. So what I did today, and I thought this would be kind of a fun little test, is I went on to the MLS just recently, and I pulled up the cheapest fourplex in Seattle. So the cheapest fourplex in Seattle is in the glamorous area of White Center. I know we are all in love with White Center. So the White Center fourplex here is $980,000 for a purchase. If you put 5% down, which is required, it would be $49,000, and it would be really hard to get FHA financing. We just talked about 3% down. 3.5% is required for FHA, and after talking with some lenders before this, including Kara, who's super awesome, it's with a self-sufficiency test, you're not going to usually pass with a triplex or a fourplex. So 1 to 2 units is possible to make that work with an FHA loan, but if you think you're going to house hack with a 3.5% FHA loan, like it's really, really hard with a triplex and a fourplex. Not impossible, and I don't want to discourage you if that's something that you have done in the past and you're looking to continue to do, but is very tough. So on top of the $49,000, because that's the minimum required down on these fourplexes, you're going to need closing costs, which is about $15,000. And if you have a bad agent, you're probably not going to get that covered. If you have $15,000 in closing costs plus $49,000, and you can actually use 75% of rental income to help you qualify. I'm sure you might have heard about that, but that does require the qualification to be a permitted unit. So for fourplexes, it's easy, right? Like there's 4 units in there, then it's zoned a fourplex, so it's clearly permitted. But if you find a single family house that has a basement that looks a little rugged or the windows are small, it's probably not permitted. And even if there's a kitchen in there and there's people renting it, the lender's not going to take income from somebody who's renting there because it's not permitted unit. So keep that in mind while you're looking into deals. And the renovations for this, it said it was turnkey, but I did look at pictures and it looked like one of the units really did need some work along with just some other minor stuff. And you're probably going to be conservative on this number, but it'd be about $20,000 I'd say that you need right off the start to get this thing renovated and where you'd want it to be as an investor. So your total cash all of a sudden, you know, what happened to that number, right? The $27,300. All of a sudden, now we're looking at $84,000 for a fourplex, and this is the cheapest fourplex in Seattle. Not as exciting. Now, your mortgage payments, taxes, capital expenditure, insurance, and if you don't know what capital expenditure is, essentially that's about like if you have a leaking toilet or just maintenance along the house, it's just problems are going to happen with any house, as you all know. So keeping that into account along with some other fees and payments, you're going to be $7,500 a month in mortgage payments. And right now, market rent in White Center for a turnkey fourplex per unit, I think each unit was about 1,000 square feet, 2-bed, 1-bath. You're looking at $1,800 each. I think that's pretty realistic. So if you're renting the 3 units out and you're living in the 1, you're going to be getting a collective income of $5,400 for units 1 through 3. And that leaves you with a little bit over $2,100 a month to live in this fourplex. Now that is a lot better than buying $1 million property and living there, right? I mean, what happened to the $7,500? It got reduced a ton. It's super, super feasible to make a killing in real estate by just simply doing this. Although it's not super exciting and you need a ton more cash than it sounded like when you saw that Instagram or TikTok video, right? So what is actually working in 2025 heading into 2026? We got to get a little bit creative here, right? We live in a tough market and expectations are high because you've probably heard horror stories of people losing a ton of money in real estate, and it does happen. So buying smart is the way to go in real estate. And if you're looking at buying your first house or you have the financial flexibility to house hack, these are some actual properties that we're going to go through today of clients of mine that have closed deals in 2025 and ways they are house hacking different ways they're house hacking and how it's working for them. We're going to go through how one of my clients did an Airbnb on a townhouse, how one of my clients did a single family house with an ADU plus a DADU, and we're going to talk about renting by the room, which I think a lot of people are house hacking currently and they don't even realize it. So yeah, you can leverage low down payments, owner occupied financing instead of investor loans. That's super exciting. It's a faster path, obviously, to owning multiple doors. After you lived in there for a year, you can go off and do it again. I know that a lot of us, different stages of life, but if you have the ability to rinse and repeat, this is just an absolute awesome way to make money in an appreciating market like Seattle. And then obviously in appreciating markets, you're going to make equity through time, and your housing costs shrink. So if you're renting a place, no matter what, if you have a roof over your head, you're probably paying what you would call too much money if it's not your mortgage, right? So rent is high, and there's ways to make you own and not pay your landlord's rent mortgage, and you can be the landlord and gain equity into your property. So let's go through some of these case studies. So like I mentioned, we're going to talk about the alternative ways to house hacking outside of just the multifamily style of house hacking. We're going to talk about ADUs and the single family rent by the room and Airbnb. So the first one we're going to touch on is what I think to be the simplest form of house hacking. You can do this without any knowledge. You don't need to pick up a book tonight and start reading. You can simply buy a house and rent the rooms in the house. You can buy a house that has a ton of rooms, and if you're the only one living there, you can still make this work. So let's go through my client Savannah's property that she purchased. And again, she had no idea what house hacking was. She probably still doesn't, but she is absolutely house hacking, and probably one of the best house hacks I've seen this year. So she bought a 4-bedroom house in Kent. It's kind of on the border between Kent, Des Moines, and Federal Way. And she purchased this property with a friend because she couldn't afford to buy a house herself. So she partnered up with a friend. They're both teachers at a local school, and they have other friends that are also renting. And this wasn't her idea when she bought it, but she's like, I want to own a house. I want to have ownership in something. And I thought that was super cool. And so we talked about how we could make that work. So she partnered with a friend who, obviously, they're working at the same place. They're both teachers earning about the same salary. So their financial position was pretty close. And they came together and was like, let's buy a house together real close to work. Rent's super high, and it's not too bad if we just partner up on a house. So they scraped together their savings and came up with a 5% down payment, which was $28,300. And if you cut that number in half, right, because they're each paying their half, is a little bit over 14 grand. Now that number's not too crazy. And again, there's closing costs involved, but we did get the negotiated seller credits towards closing costs, so they didn't even have anything to pay outside of that, which was super awesome for them. So their mortgage payments on this, I used round numbers here, but this is pretty much what it looks like, is $3,400 in mortgage payments plus PMI, right, because they're not doing 20% down, is another $225, leaving a grand total of $3,625 is what they owe together every single month. Now let's cut that number in half because there's two of them, right? So that's all of a sudden it's $1,800 a month to own a house in King County. Now that's super exciting, but that's not even the best part. There was 4 bedrooms in this house and only 2 of them bought this house. So what do you do with the other 2 bedrooms? Instantly, when they were under contract, they knew everything was going to close. We passed inspection. They started asking around during class, and they were like, during their lunches, they met with some other people in the school and were like, hey, where are you living? What's going on in your life? And it turned out it was pretty easy for them to find 2 people to rent 2 vacant bedrooms on this house they were going to move into. So they were like, why don't you rent my bedroom? And they told them how much they were paying for rent. And if you're going to go find any bedroom to rent in King County, you're going to look at between $800 and $1,100. This guy rents a ton of rooms out, and I'm sure he'd say the same. So yeah, I think what ended up happening was they're like, yeah, I mean, I'm renting my own place right now, and it's pretty expensive, and I can save money and live with my friends. That sounds like a really good situation, and it was a good situation for my buyer as well. So they decided, let's move in as soon as you close. Luckily, they were in a position where their lease ended right on time, so it ended up working out, and it doesn't always work out that way, but the day they moved in, their tenants moved in, and they're just friends to them, paying them money, but their tenants moved in. And they were collecting $900 for one of the smaller rooms and $1,100 for the larger room, so that all 4 bedrooms are occupied. So between these two, that's $2,000 a month in rental income.
Can I ask a question or make a point?
We'll go to the questions at the end. Yeah, we'll have time for questions. But the cost to own this house is $1,600. And if you cut that time in half, or cut that cost in half, it's $813, which is less than both of their tenants or renters or friends. So now they're paying less than their friends were, all for $14,000 to own a house in King County. That's just fantastic. Super easy way to understand a basic level of house hacking. Some other opportunities to house hack a single family house that you might not know that you're house hacking is to buy something that has large garages, especially a 2-car garage. You can convert them into many, many bedrooms, depending on the layouts. It doesn't cost a ton of money like you probably would think. And you can also do pad splits on each of the doors. From my understanding, and you'd probably have to consult with the city, but I know there's a lot of laws against Airbnb and like how many listings you can have, but if it's one address with multiple listings, such as like each, door 1, door 2, door 3, you're allowed to do that because there is only one address on the listing. So again, you'd have to talk with the city for sure, but I know some people that are, doing pad splits on each, which is super cool because they're collecting short-term rental income and they're living there, so they can do all of the, property management, because you're looking at 25% right now in management fees for people that are trying to run an Airbnb business that they're not living in. So there's other resources too. If you have no friends and you're like, there's nobody that can rent this house for me, there's a lot of cool resources online like Roomies. I know Facebook Marketplace has like different communities too. It's not that scary. You can definitely screen your tenants still and make sure you guys are good cohabitable partners. But I think for the sake of the numbers and how scary it sounds, like this is pretty much the easiest way you can break down a house hack on a basic level. Now let's get into a little bit more advanced level. My client was looking for a house hack with an ADU, and we were looking on the market for a while, and we came up and found that you can't really see in this picture, but behind this house is another structure. That's a DADU that was built in like 2010, I think. So this was before a lot of the laws changed where you can have larger structures and nicer structures, but this was built and grandfathered in. And there was a finished basement underneath this level. My clients are living in this 3-bedroom, 2-bath level on the top, and then there's a 1-bed, 1-bath on the bottom. So my clients moved in to this top level that was completely renovated, and we wrote an offer subject to interior viewing. So while we were under contract, we went in to meet both of the tenants because they were both home, walk through the unit, walk through the other DADU. Things looked pretty good. We ended up proceeding, we closed on the property, and this is what the numbers look like on this property. So first of all, it was zoned LR2, which is fantastic. It allows them to build townhomes in the future, and their neighboring parcel that has the exact same square footage has 5 existing townhomes on there. They made a killing on that property, and that was not too long ago. They purchased this property, and I'll let you know it's in Columbia City, which is really close to the light rail. Pretty appreciating market, and it's for $795K. They put 3% down because they could do conventional financing because it's not considered multifamily, right? So they didn't have to do the 5% that I told you earlier that was required. So they put only 3% down, which is $23,859 before closing costs. So out of pocket, that's how much they owed. And then they rented the finished basement to the existing tenant and the DADU to the existing tenant. They did absolutely nothing. There was no renovations that needed. Those tenants have been there for 5+ years, both of them. They pay on time. They're great people. And after meeting them, it sounded like they had no intention on leaving. And my clients were like, well, we have no intention on raising your rent or going through the process of trying to get this thing renovated and renting either. So we closed on the property, and all of a sudden, their mortgage payments, $5,400 a month, and they're collecting both of these tenants' income, which is $3,350 a month. And they're left with payments before other expenses for $2,100 a month, which is crazy. If they were going to find that exact same unit, I ran comps, and you're looking at $2,600 a month to just rent that unit. And they're living there for way less than that. And they own the property, they get the appreciation, they get the tax benefits, and all they did was simply move in and kept the rents the same and kept their tenants happy. It's an awesome story of house hacking, and before in the past, there was a bit of an issue to try and get these things through the appraisal process because appraisers couldn't see a single family and a DADU on the lot. But if you go through like CARA for like private lending programs, you now don't need to pull stoves out and call it a den. It can be a functional ADU, which is super exciting. So definitely opportunity for that kind of house hack. Now, another super cool gritty house hack that I'd call is a client of mine who was interested in renting a townhome on Airbnb. And when she told me that, I was like, all right, cool. We're going to need 20% down. You're buying it as an investment. Like that's what she's like, no, I want to live there. And I'm like, oh. So we started going through numbers and ideas of how to do it. Turns out she's an interior designer. So she knew a ton about me, a ton about like moving different areas and making it feel like it's its own space. But she is in the process of laying out this property. She's going to live upstairs. There's a shared kitchen. But we looked at other listings, and this is a thing that a lot of people do, and a lot of people don't mind renting out, supposedly. I mean, Seattle has a problem with housing, right? I mean, there's a lot of demand and not a lot of supply. So because of that, people are forced to rent anything and everything. So even though they're sharing this space, she's created this super cool space. She's got awesome blueprints, and basically it's going to be its own Airbnb that she's going to live upstairs and manage. And so while she's managing it, she had to put about 15 grand into furnishing it and putting in renovations because it wasn't super turnkey. But she only spent $495 on the purchase, and she did get an FHA loan on this. And with FHA, you can get up to 6% seller credits. If you're buying something with a conventional program, you can only get 3%. So that might be something you consider when you're writing offers this time of year. Because she got more seller credits than she put down, which is super cool. And that's one of the only ways you can do that, right? Because 3 is 3 and 6 is 6. So I ran comps in the area, and for this exact house, this is like right in Green Lake, good area. She's looking at $146 a day for average daily rent. If you see ADR for short-term rentals and listings like that, that's what ADR means, average daily rent. So occupancy in this area, looking at the comps, is about 80%. So average daily rent at 146 times the 80% occupancy you'd get a month, she's looking at $3,500 a month for self-managing this Airbnb, so she doesn't have to pay that 25% that I was just talking about earlier. And so with her mortgage, her PMI, her taxes, her insurance, she's looking at $3,800 a month roughly. And she's getting, like I said, $3,500 in rental income. So collectively, I mean, she's left paying $263 to own a house in Green Lake. Another super cool example of someone who's house hacking, not the traditional way, not the let's buy a fourplex, live in one unit and rent out the 3 ways, but finding ways to be creative and make a house hack work on your own. I think a lot of us are kind of stuck with this idea of, man, prices are so high and I'm running numbers with these fourplexes and it just doesn't work. Like, we cannot house hack these homes. Yes, it requires, I mean, I'm sure you've looked at all these scenarios and thought, man, like I don't want to share walls with my tenants, or I don't want, yes, it requires sacrifice. But if you're willing to sacrifice, you can make a ton of financial freedom in real estate, and you only need to live in there for 1 year. So there's a lot of opportunity for house hacking, despite what you see of just buy a multifamily property and rent it out. So a couple of helpful tips while you are looking for creative house hacks is definitely build a team of experts. I think a lot of agents are going to tell you that, you know, they know how to do this. We're called the HouseHack Seattle, so I guess I could just say that we know how to do this. But definitely want to build your team of people that you know and trust, and find creative ways to do it outside of just, you know, saying that they do it and buying, like start looking at multifamily properties, because there are ways to house hack without looking at multifamily properties. I just showed you 3 of them. Get a good lender. I know it's easy to go through like credit unions and get you know, cheaper interest rates for a lot of people, but if you have a lender that will pick up the phone at 11 p.m. when you're fighting for other offers, it's super helpful. It really is. It makes a world of difference. So start building your sphere. We have lots of relationships with contractors, arborists, builders, landscapers, you name it, we got it. And it's important to have those people in your back pocket. So forming those connections, being here, networking with people, learning about people in your community who they know, super helpful. Stay away from HOAs. That's not a need. You don't need to. You can still make a house hack work without staying away from HOAs, but it is super helpful, right? We talked about a couple conversions you can make, and when it comes to renting, you know, there are a couple restrictions and CCNRs that could get you in trouble later. Those documents are 75 pages long, and you probably don't want to read through them. So it's best to just find neighborhoods, if you can, that are outside of HOAs. Bonus tip, if it has alley access or a corner lot, which we're going to talk about here in a second, you can set up a second search filter. Like I said, there are a lot of ways to house hack a single family house, so don't start looking at multifamily houses only. I don't know if Zillow has one for sure, but I do know Compass has one. So if you connect with a Compass agent, you'll definitely be able to get set up with a search like this. But Essentially what you're being fed are second kitchen properties, so homes that have a second kitchen. And if you just make that filter, you're going to see waterfront homes in Medina, right? But once you filter like 700,000, 800,000 less, you're going to see the homes of other people in the past who have house hacked. And those homes are usually harder to sell and priced a little lower because they have a second kitchen and it's got a weird layout. Maybe they added a door, all sorts of things. So setting yourself up with a second kitchen search is usually going to have a second unit with a second entrance. Most people with $800,000 and less homes don't have two kitchens because they think it's eloquent or super exciting for their guests. It's more of a probably a previous house hack in a way that you can have a mother-in-law place or another separate unit to separate. You can also look for split level homes. Those are some of my favorites. You can convert the bottom unit and top unit because most of the split level homes have a separate entrance on the back side. It costs about 50 grand total to get the thing with a kitchen, and if you need to add a bedroom, probably less than that. But accounting for that into your costs, you can also get different loan products. And if you're like, I don't have 50 grand to close and convert a single family house into a separate living space, well, you can kind of roll that into through a Homestyle renovation loan. That's just one of the many products that is offered. What that means is basically if the house is $700,000 and you need 50 grand to put into the house, maybe it's not just adding a kitchen, maybe it's putting a new roof on it, whatever it is, you can actually get a loan for 750 and have the cash on hand right away when you close to start working on the house and getting it to where you want it. So that's really cool, and that's again another reason why you'd talk with a lender instead of just going online for products like that. Now I know a lot of people already know a lot about the house hacking. I've had a couple conversations with you today who have asked me questions about DADUs and where do you start. It feels kind of overwhelming. You keep seeing again people online. You buy a house, build for 400, sell for 800, and life is good. I'm going to show you kind of the surface level of how to look for DADUs. I think this might be helpful for some people that are looking to get started and just figuring out what's available in your neighborhood to do DADU projects. And obviously there's more feasibility that goes into this, but I think looking at a house, you can spend 5 minutes after this and feel pretty confident one way or another if it works for DADU. So DADU does stand for Detached Accessory Dwelling Unit. Essentially what it is you can add a separate home. You can condoize it or not, but it can be, right now, it's 1,000 square feet or less. A little bit more now.
1,200 for more than 2 bed.
1,200 for more than 2 bed, and they're constantly changing laws too. Now you can build 3 stories and have the first story as a garage, which is super cool because parking was an issue. So DADU guys, definitely this guy in the back, David Weiser, he's a builder too. So if you want to get connected with him, definitely hit him up after this. But yeah, a lot of opportunity with DADU. So how do you start? Where do you find a DADU? Does your house that you currently live in have access to build a DADU? These are a couple tools that you can maybe look into to see if it works. So like I said earlier, look for corner lots and alleyways. Seattle's got a huge parking problem, and if you build a house in a backyard that you have to walk past somebody else's house to and you can't park your car, it's going to have a really hard time selling. And on top of that, it's just not going to be very attractive in the community. So you want to have a separate touch point, separate access point for a vehicle to get to. And alleyways and corner lots are the best because there's 2 access points, obviously, for either of those. I think the city says you need 3,200 square feet. I've yet to find a project that works with 3,200 square feet. I don't know, maybe some of you have, but that's like if the house is positioned perfectly. I like to filter, 3,500 and plus because from that moment on, you can actually make a footprint work to build a DADU. And then you got to look for zoning that's NR, LR, or RSL. 5-foot setbacks from the fence. So if you take a ruler out there during your showing and you start measuring things, just make sure you keep in mind that you got to have 5-foot setbacks because that's an additional, like if you're going off the single family house, that's an additional 10 feet, right? 5 from the fence, 5 from the fence. So keep that in mind. And then there's a lot of pre-approved plans. You don't need to have a ton of building experience yourself to get a DADU project. I know it sounds overwhelming to build a house, but it's absolutely not the same process of building a house. It's actually really easy, and a lot of our clients get the whole thing done and sold in 7 months. Permitting is not very hard with these. Like you've probably heard horrible stories about single family house permitting, but these DADUs have a ton of pre-approved plans. And there's like one particular model called the schooner model, which is just a giant rectangle. It can fit just about anywhere. Super easy to build, so don't be overwhelmed by that. And then find comps. Don't be the first person in your neighborhood to be building the DADU if it's your first time and you're nervous. Like, there's enough data out there that's been collected because this has worked for so many people where you could buy a lot and build a DADU and find success by looking at history of things that have happened locally. So R&D, replicate and duplicate. This is a house that I'm closing on tomorrow, actually. I'm giving out the keys. It's super exciting. This is a exact feasibility of like, we're gonna take this exact example and we're gonna break down if you can do a DADU on it, and I'll kind of show you how you can. So this is the lot right here. So I pulled it up. You always wanna go to Google and look at like the satellite view. If you can go on there and just scroll around, you can usually see the shape of the lot just on Google. You don't need like a special software or anything like that. You can see the lines of similar properties. And I pulled it up on here and I immediately noticed the neighboring parcels had a structure here. This one also had a structure, but it's too small. It was a garage, which I'll show you later. But I noticed these two right here. So I went on there and I saw that there were some houses in the neighborhood that had something like this. So this is what the backyard looks like. Those are the two DADUs. This is the alley. This is that garage that I was just talking about. And that's the house we're closing on in the front. And this is, so that's the DADU, and the neighboring parcel is the DADU. This is the one 2 doors down, sold for $815, 12 days on the market. Granted, this was a different time. This is 2023, but not too long ago. And this is a pre-approved plan, I think. And this sold for $815. The other one sold for $805. The whole build had to have been under $400 for all of this. So they made a ton of money, and not to mention the DADUs made a ton of money with, you know, how quickly they built those and sold those. But the front houses separately sold after the condoization process. They sold for over $1 million in the front. We're closing on this thing for $905 tomorrow. She's immediately going to be making money the second she starts building the DADU, and she's not looking to build the DADU. She was just looking to buy a house, and she's like, oh, wow, this is cool. I'm probably going to build it in 5 years when laws are even better and you can build bigger homes. So just buying homes that have potential to do that is super advantageous. You don't have to build tomorrow, but because it's such a desirable piece of land, looking for those during your HouseHack search is super helpful. So yeah, she's in the green on that one. And then so after you look through the comps, you look at the satellite view, you kind of get an idea on the layout. If that all looks good, there's a couple of resources that you're going to want to use. AD Universe, which is actually a city site that you're allowed to just plug in any address in Seattle, and it will tell you the parcel number. It will tell you all the requirements for an ADU. If the zoning's correct, if there's other existing ADUs on the property, if the lot size is adequate, if the coverage is okay. Now, this is not going to get you all of your answers, and sometimes there are flaws in this system, but essentially, if you see a bunch of green here, you can go on over to the GIS map, which the city allows you to pull up any parcel in Seattle, and you can look at the situation of this lot. So you can look at like the water lines, the sewer lines, see where you would connect if you were to build an existing structure. It's not rocket science, right? Make sure both of those, water and sewer, are on your lot that you could tap into. Where would it come from? But most importantly, you want to check for ECAs. You want to check to see if there's any environmentally critical areas in your lot, because if there are, even if you're not planning on building a DADU, you should be looking at this anyway for a house, because ECAs absolutely destroy deals for DADUs. So I pulled it up and I noticed there's absolutely none, which is great. See the same colors on these two lots, and they built those. So those are two great resources to do ground level feasibility before sending a ton of emails out on yourself. Like maybe you can go home and put your own address in here and figure out you can build a DADU in your house. At that point, then you get connected with the right people and see if it really does work. But lastly, I want to just touch on as we conclude, I know we talked a lot about house hacking and just like how exciting that can be, and to minimize and subsidize your mortgage so you can have financial freedom through real estate. But I think a lot of people are concerned in the market right now, right? And I think, I don't know if you know the old saying, but buy when everyone else is fearful. That's absolutely the case right now. I am seeing a ton of really good deals. I just told you I'm closing on that tomorrow. That is a killer deal that would never have happened, 5 months ago. And interest rates haven't changed a ton since 5 months, maybe a little bit, but not enough for a deal like that to just fall through someone's hands back then. So there are absolutely winning opportunities right now. And if you zoom out to a 50-year image of what's happened, there's really like 6 major dips that we can like calculate. Obviously there's more than that, but 6 major ones that we can adjust for. And every single drought ends in recovery. I don't know if you noticed, but everything goes up no matter what. It's absolutely not rocket science. You don't even have to be smart. You could be a kindergartner and see like, no matter what happens, things go up. And if you buy at the worst point ever, you're still gonna go up by just holding. So what house hacking does and allows you to is you're allowed to go through those rough times because you're not looking to sell tomorrow. You're looking to gain equity and appreciation in these properties. And we're absolutely in a good market in Seattle. I have no fears of anyone buying real estate that they're gonna lose a ton of money unless they plan on flipping. I have a couple fears for those, but if you know what you're doing, you can seriously still make a ton of money doing that. But yeah, I still think it's a really good time to buy, and if anything, it's creating a lot of opportunity in our market right now. So I'm really excited for 2026. I'm not too scared or nervous. I think it's going to be a great year, especially for buyers. Unless you're planning on selling a year from when you buy it and house hack it, maybe not the time to buy. But I mean, if you plan on holding it for a couple years, which you should anyway, because that's how you gain wealth in real estate. 90% of millionaires claim their wealth came from real estate. So it's really awesome to see, you know, a chart like this and just kind of have some breathing room, because no matter what, every drought ends in a recovery. So to recap, we discovered different ways of how to house hack outside of just a traditional multifamily property. We went through real life case studies from deals that I've closed this year in 2025 of clients of mine who are actively house hacking right now. And even if they don't know it, they're still making money in their property, and they're going to thank themselves in the future. We learned how to do a quick feasibility study for DADU potential. Hopefully that helped. If it was kind of confusing, there's a lot of information. Definitely reach out to one of the agents here today or David. We can share a little bit more about what to look for these DADUs. But more than anything, we learned about the importance of building a team and just having people in your corner and resources. So don't be afraid to connect with others tonight. With that, that's about all I have. So hopefully you learned something. Thank you guys. Yeah, and we can get into questions. Yes?
So I wanted to say, so on that house where you have those 2 tenants moving on day 1,
Yeah.
you actually now have money in your pocket because the first mortgage payment isn't due depending on the time.
That's right.
you close. So now you can use that to fund your reserve account,
Yeah.
CapEx or anything like that.
Yeah, that's even better, right? Because your payment's not due the day you close. It's due usually a couple months after. So they have some time to recoup investments, and they're making money for free until they have that payment due. So that's a good point. Thank you. Are there any other questions out there? Feel free to shoot anything. It doesn't have to be about house hacking or DADUs, anything real estate related. Yeah, Ewan.
Just I understand the 203K laws got relaxed about 4th of November, where you're now you can roll the rehab costs into the loan, you can use predicted revenues, predicted rental income to finance the loan. Is that changing your thought on we've talked about the self-sufficiency FHA condition? Is that something that's changed?
I'm not seeing much change on my end. I don't know, have you, Michael?
The problem with self-sufficiency tests, they kick in if you have 3 or more units on an FHA loan specifically. The problem is that they typically take the lower of actual rents or market rents. So you can do all the math in the world and still get screwed on a self-sufficiency deal. I've actually had a self-sufficiency deal fall through in, I want to say it was U-Place, actually. It was a triplex, and our actual rents met self-sufficiency, but the appraiser, and this is the reality of real estate, right? It's a whole bunch of humans making a whole bunch of human decisions, right? The appraiser decided that market rent was actually lower than the real rent roll that we had, and dinged us about $100 a unit, and stuck to their guns that the unit rent was too high. We weren't going to get that on renewal. Like the tenants were paying too much, and it fell through. So self-sufficiency is just a huge curveball in your deal that is very, very hard to account for because of the way it's calculated, the lower of those 2 objects. and because we're a high cost market, right?
Well, and I'll add to that, because I was doing a lot of them in like 2020, 2021, when rates were lower. The only reason it's really kind of out of the market is because rates went up. FHA rates right now are like 5.625, so it might come back if rates come down, it just depends.
Yeah, oftentimes it's best to have a vacant unit if you are getting under market rent, because they do take the less of the market rent versus it actually being occupied. So,
how many times did you have to write an offer before it got accepted? Even when everything looked right, the deal fell through for some reason, but what was it like in your experience?
To clarify, you mean like specifically how many times we wrote an offer to?
Continue writing offers to get a HouseHack.
For myself.
Yeah.
For myself, yeah. I would say it's tough because these great deals that I said I was picky about, you're usually competing against cash, right? Like there's people that see the DADU potential as well, and they have a little bit more cash than you, or they can fund the money through hard money, which is possible for me. But I don't know. I think that kind of becomes the hesitation. But that's why I'm so excited to enter this next market, is because a lot of these cash buyers are on the sideline waiting to time the market, and it's not about timing the market, it's about time in the market. So when they're going to be on the sidelines, I'm still going to be writing the same offers because the numbers are going to look the same to me. And I don't really care for, what the numbers are going to say, tomorrow. I mean, everything appreciates over time. But if the numbers look good today, like if I can get a tenant in there and make the numbers work today, and I can move myself out of that property to go to my next HouseHack and fund my unit that I just moved out of into, subsidizing my mortgage even more, if not covering it, it's very possible. Right? I mean, like I showed you the rent by the room. If she moves out and rents those other 2 rooms, she's cash flowing. That's all it took. And so she can do that in less than a year now. But for me, how many times I write an offer, I mean, it definitely depends on market conditions. There's always sharks out there that are gonna, strong arm you, but it's gonna happen. Like you just keep writing offers, and I mean, I've done it with my clients. Everyone has, like, it will work. I wouldn't be scared to write any more offers just because I lost one, Good question though. And for a lot of the deals I did go through, it was one offer and it was accepted, especially right now. That 905 one we did a little bit, I think we wrote 2 because we had to compete against another offer. That was a lot more cash. And we found a way to win it, and yeah. Sorry, did I see a hand go up? No? Oh, here.
You mentioned about seller credits and some of the examples you showed. Just wondering what exactly it means and how does it work? Like how does one get seller credits?
Yeah, so when you are writing an offer, you're typically going to have a 22A in there, which is a financing contingency. And in there is a portion where you can add seller credits. And what those go for is the seller's going to net what the seller's going to net, right? If you have the seller sell a house for $900,000 and you got 10,000 seller credits, the seller's going to net $890, no matter what. If you wrote an offer for $890, it ends up being the same for them. So you have to kind of, work. Like if you write a $900,000 offer, that gets them really excited, but you do have to kind of make them understand they're still going to net less. But for the credits, the way they work is you just put it into the offer, and then at the closing table, when you're doing the checks and balances, we're getting $23,000 on this one. We got seller credits for the 905 one I was just talking through. She's getting 23 grand, and she just signed yesterday, and it was all in the balance sheet. Your agent's going to look through that. Escrow is going to make sure that you're getting the right stuff. And, it doesn't cost $23,000 to just have her closing costs, but we bought down the rate, which was more than what the closing costs were just. So she got to use the full amount. And that is another good thing to add is if we asked for $25,000 and we were only able to use $23,000, there's $2 grand that goes back to the seller's pocket. So it's a use it or lose it kind of product. I think it's a really good place to be right now to get a lot of seller credits. Like I showed you my client who closed with FHA and got 6% seller credit. I mean, that's phenomenal. I think a lot of people misunderstand what that's used for though. I think a lot of people think like, oh, we got the seller to pay for this or the seller to do this. That's kind of separate. Sometimes that does happen and you can send in like work orders and estimates happen before closing, but a lot of sellers don't want to deal with all that. So what it ends up being is even though it's credited to you, that means that cash stays in your pocket. So like if you had $15,000 in seller credit that was covered by them and you needed to fix something wrong with, the bathroom, you can use 15 grand to go put in the bathroom. So I think a lot of people misunderstand how that works. It doesn't actually work. Like they paid for you to fix a bathroom, but on your own dime with them giving you credits. Does that make sense?
In terms of property searches, do we need to rely on descriptions to automatically find alley access and corner lots, or is that something that's in the MLS?
Yeah, the MLS is a little tricky with those kind of filters. There's not really a good metric to use that I've found to be just let me look at every single alley property or every single corner lot. But with the right filters of putting the correct zoning, 3,500 plus square foot, and then looking at all the homes within your other criteria of purchase price, neighborhoods, you'll see a select amount of homes. It won't overwhelm you because there's not a ton of inventory right now. But if you zoom out, you can start seeing, go filter or go to like home by home by home. That's what I do a lot. And just see the layout of the lot. See what your neighbors are doing. You can see it. I mean, we have technology. It's crazy. Like you can also use a measuring tool to see the exact amount of square feet and feet in the perimeter, and if you did have a setback, how far that would be. So there's a lot of tools on the GIS that you can actually use to make measurements. But to answer your question, there's not really a good filter. You can get an agent that will do the sweaty work for you and then send you the good deals, right? But yeah. It's a very intimate group today, so ask away.
You any research on the utility separation when you're finding the DADU properties, marking those?
Through the condoization process? Yeah, so with the condoization process, it's not required for you to condoize it. You're still putting it on the main lot. So like a lot of people, you can get, I mean, how much are you getting for the most expensive DADU you've seen? Like almost $5,000 a month?
For rent?
Yeah.
None of mine are getting $5,000, but I've seen some in Ballard getting 5,500, 5,300.
Yeah.
Nicer places like this, but
Yeah, but like there are some markets, like if you build a DADU in Ballard and you can rent it for $5,000, like the situation might end up being where you just want to use it as a renter. Like you just want to rent it out. You don't want to sell it right away. Now, if you want to sell it right away, you do have to condoize it. And at that point, you're going to be spending money, and that process happens through, builders and the city, which we can definitely get that process help you started with. But it's good to look at all options outside of just building and selling. Because there might be profitability if you can stomach the costs to have it just rent out and cash flow, because those things rent pretty good. A problem that we might start seeing that I think is a lot of these DADUs look the exact same. I talked about the pre-approved plans, and it's not super exciting for a lot of people to pay $5,000 a month to live in a house that looks the exact same down the street. But it's Seattle. Like I have full confidence that they're still going to be rented out. Maybe you lose a little bit in the value, but because you could do a custom build, it costs a little bit more, but I think there's no problem in renting them out.
if you were getting a new kind of investor on the phone for the first time, and they were asking like, "Hey, I'm interested in house hacking. Where should I start?" What would you point them towards to kind of get the ball rolling and start learning about the strategy?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I mentioned slightly the second kitchen filter, but I think like if you're looking for single family house that have an existing kitchen, it probably has an existing separate entrance. It's super easy to just move in, live upstairs. You don't need to rent out all these bedrooms and change your lifestyle, because I mean, to be honest, I'm married. I don't want to rent a bunch of rooms in my house, so I need something that's got its own unit. So when I do the single or the second kitchen filter, it usually means there's a second habitable space that is an ADU, right? So an accessory dwelling unit that's functioning as that. Whether it's permitted or not, that's something you got to look into a little bit, because I think like 80% of the ADUs in Seattle are not permitted. So, but you can make them permitted. It doesn't take as much time and money as you probably think. But yeah, no, I think setting yourself up for success by filling out your buyer box like you do on Zillow anyway when you're looking at homes, and then just adding that filter of a second kitchen, your listings are going to shrink down to probably like 5 if your buyer box is tight. And then out of those, you'll be able to see the kind of homes that you're interested in. And I mean, let's say you find something with a mortgage that's $5,000 a month and you can rent out one of the units for $2,500 a month. Maybe you do a little bit of renovation before you put it up for rent, and then you move out and you can rent yours out for $2,500 a month. That's $5,000. That's what your mortgage is anyway. So now you're own this house for free. it really does work like that for a lot of people. So yeah, I think the overwhelming side of like, oh my gosh, I have to spend all this money and get all these contractors and create a unit in a house with this split level house. It doesn't have to be like that. A lot of people have already done that. And there are a lot of homes on the market like that. So, and usually, like I mentioned, you can negotiate a lot more on those houses because they're not super desirable for a lot of people. Like if you're moving a family in, you would rather have a bedroom for little Johnny, not a kitchen in the middle of the living room, right? So they aren't as desirable as you think. And I think instead of making excuses of like, oh, I can't afford a house, you're probably paying $2,500 a month in rent if you're living in Seattle anyway. So, I mean, if you could share your wall and get your tenant to rent that out for you, I mean, in that scenario, the fake scenario I just made up, that's how you do it right there. Yeah, thank you all for being here. We will stick around for a while. There's plenty of time to mingle. I was going to say there's plenty of food, but I looked over and there's not. So, but there are plenty of drinks, I should hope. But yeah, hang out, talk to each other, meet some new people, and yeah, thank you guys so much.